The James Show Podcast.
Enjoy your downtown while it lasts. You may lose it to riots next summer after Karmelo Anthony gets the justice it appears he deserves and is found guilty in his murder trial of Austin Metcalf. The trial date was set for June 2026, June 1st. Jeepers. So give it a month or so, maybe a couple months, 2 months to have the trial. And then there's going to be the verdict where it looks like if there's any justice, he'll be found guilty. I don't know. I don't know all the details of the case, but it looks bad for him. That'll be just in time for rioting season, isn't it? It's duck season, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season. No, it's rioting season. I'm not saying the DA did it on purpose. What I am saying is this is the situation. These are the kind of cases and timing that gets exploited for political purposes. And look, I shouldn't use the term so general. It's just something Team Blue does. Never does Team Red get upset, go loot a Foot Locker. It just doesn't happen. So I would not be surprised if it happened. I think if you had to say, James, you're going to put your chips on yes or no, I think I would put them on yes. Because I don't see how this guy goes through a court process without being found guilty. And we just have too much of a recent pattern of these cases like this, whether it's a Trayvon or a Michael Brown or a George Floyd. Is Karmelo Anthony going to be the next one? I think so. 800-288-9227. This is Ron in Stephenville on WBAP.
Hey, James.
Hey, Ron.
They need to have him convicted.
Yeah, they kind of do. Because if he gets off, then
they can't show craziness.
Exactly. Yeah. We're on the same board. Isn't that a weird place to be in? The guy that's supposed to be their hero, they're behind closed doors going, please go to jail. Please go to jail. Please be guilty. Please be guilty.
Oh, they can manipulate the whole thing to try to make sure that he is guilty, that he gets convicted of it. They'll do whatever they can to jury rig and everything else to make sure that he's found guilty so that they can sow chaos.
Well, there's also, I read from the commenter on Twitter, I don't know if this is necessarily true, but he says if there's black people on the jury, there's no way he'll be found guilty because they're sort of the tribal allegiance. I don't know if I'll go that far, but there's a lot of people saying that, so I don't necessarily completely disregard it.
Yeah, the BLMs, all of them, the Antifas, everybody that wants to riot, the ones that are in charge of them, they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that he's found guilty so that they can sow chaos. I
don't think they have to do much but watch the tape, and he'll be found guilty. But totally agree. Ron in Stephenville, great call. This is George in Fort Worth. You're on WBAP.
Yes, what I have to say, I think they will get the right that will find, make it a hung jury or find him innocent in some way, some possible way. I see what they did on, the GoFundMe. 90% of the people there, maybe even more than that, they're saying that he's totally innocent, that all he was doing was defending his kind and defending injustices to black people for centuries. So I think that they're going to get the right black jurors to find him innocent.
Well, see,
that's all I have to say.
Then they won't have to riot.
Well, you know what? We're getting this fatigue, from rioters. I'm sure they're all different colors, but we know, from the civil rights era. I grew up during the civil rights era, and I know who the rioters were. And, we're sick of it. The people are sick of it. That's why we saw the backlash in the 2024 election.
Now, that's an interesting thought, too. Like, it has the rioting run its course because it goes in cycles. They rioted in the 60s, the Watts riot and whatever. Then there wasn't rioting again for a good while until I think Rodney King could be the ground zero for the next wave of rioting. And then now we have this one with the Trayvons and Michael Brown and Freddie Gray and Eric Garner and now George Floyd of the world. I feel you on that one. Also, has anyone else been online and seen the social media rumors that the dad may have used a racial slur in some connotation? Because all it takes is just a little bit of a reminder about the racial aspect of this, and some people just get so worked up at any hint of racism that the facts take a back seat.
Correct. I believe you're right. And this basically was a cold-blooded, calculated first-degree murder.
Yeah.
Unequivocally.
Well, I see that. You see that. We'll find out if the jury sees that, and then we'll find out if there'll be riots afterwards. So out of the top stories today, I really feel bad that I can't spend more time on the flooding. I just want to touch on the new news because there's really nothing else new except for the first time that this is the first day since it happened that I can come in here and tell you things aren't as bad as they seemed yesterday. Now, the death toll went up just a tick, and every death is a tragedy and every life matters. But it's up to 132 dead. Here's where the good news is. When I started off this week, it was 160 people missing. It theorized up to about 170 yesterday at some point, and then I come back in today and doing some research before the beginning of the show. It's down to 101 missing statewide. So I don't know if they found 70 people or whatever happened, but this is the first time the numbers have gone down. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Even though I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it, I figured that's information you would want to know. All right, my next guest is a regular. His name's David Hamilton. He's with the National Security Economic Center at UNT. Welcome back to the James Show. Now, he does a lot of heavy lifting on these foreign affairs stories. He does a good job keeping an eye on what goes on outside of these borders. And it sounds like Donald Trump and Putin, their friendship has cooled a little bit. Let me play a little soundbite where Trump talks about this phone call that he had with Putin. He gets off the phone. A few minutes later, Putin fires missiles, and Trump's kind of surprised by that. So the duplicity bothers him. Here.
Say it.
How did you tell Putin this was happening?
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. And I said, it's strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything. My conversations with him are always very pleasant. I say, isn't that a very lovely conversation? And then the missiles go off that night. I go home, I tell the First Lady, and I spoke to Vladimir today. We had a wonderful conversation. She said, oh, really? Another city was just hit.
So, David Hamilton, I guess we can't trust Putin these days.
Yeah, I don't think we ever could. And I don't think anyone thinks Trump is silly enough to think that he thinks Putin's a nice guy. The idea of calling them friends has always been a little strange to me. Many people, regardless of what side of the aisle are on, have said that you need to have dialogue with your enemies as well as your allies. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer, all that sort of thing. But yeah, the cold hard reality is what you said before, I've said on your show before, which is that Putin is very, very difficult to trust. Funny that bad guys who want to take over the world don't always tell the truth, right? And we're surprised.
Yeah, well, we're not shocked, but we kind of were hoping the incentives would align to where it would at least match the rhetoric that's coming out of Russia. And yep. I see Trump acting like a businessman. You never negotiate with someone who perceives you as an adversary, so you always act friendly while negotiations are going on. Xi Jinping and I, I don't like the way he runs his country, but he and I, we have a good personal relationship. Me and Putin have a good personal relationship. Me and fill in the blank have a good personal relationship. So that's what he's going to say about everyone he's in negotiations with. But that's not necessarily the truth. And I think we're finally admitting that here in Russia. That
the carrot and stick idea has been something you and I brought up many, many times. The previous administration, I criticized for not having a big enough stick to begin with, for sort of slowly ratcheting up the pressure, and eventually, more and more and more. And that was good. But I think we would have been much better suited. It would have been much better for us, for the world, to have been much very harsher immediately on from every single sanction that we could have at them to begin with. At the same time, throw out some form of carrot. And there was never a carrot under the previous administration. It was always sort of this slow beating, like Chinese water torture. There was no heavy-handed approach at the beginning, and also no exit strategy. I was much happier to see that we are at least trying to negotiate with them, but the carrot and stick thing hasn't worked. I think we're going to have to go back to a big stick, and we're going to have to say also, and if we can make this pain go away, if you'll collaborate, we could normalize relations. But what Trump is going to have to do now is go after the Russian allies who enable them through the purchase of their oil and other goods. They're going to have to put sanctions and tariffs sort of to embargo Russia. It is a gas station disguised as a country. It really only has one asset, which is natural gas and oil. You have to hit them where it hurts. and then at the same time say, hey, if you stop doing this, we will stop sending so much aid. We have to ratchet back up the aid to the Ukrainians. At the same time, it was always right to tell the Ukrainians, you guys can't pass an audit, nor can our DOD. So we need to, you guys need to be honest brokers and stewards of the money that we give you. Show us what you're doing with that. Holding them accountable is good, but holding Putin accountable and making him feel a lot of pain right now is really the only way to get his attention.
Well, how do we do that besides militarily? Because Donald Trump says, well, we're going to do some secondary sanctions starting in August if Putin doesn't start acting right. But sanctions don't seem to have been working thus far.
Yeah, it's simply amount of pain. We haven't, like I said, at the beginning of this war years ago, we ratcheted up slowly. We wanted to be sort of commensurate, et cetera, and we didn't want to overdo it. We should have done more. And if there's anything left if there's any ammo left, in your pocket, you need to be shooting those bullets off now. And these secondary sanctions that we're talking about, making it painful for the other countries that empower him and enable him to do business. We have to hurt them. We have to hurt him. We have to give as many drones and as much money and pain. So on the one side of the ledger, we're going to ramp up our support of Ukraine and give them what they need monetarily while holding them accountable to not spend it and give it to people sort of under the table. We have to do a good job of that because we're not a piñata that has unlimited amounts of candy in it. You can't just keep whacking us and hoping that we're going to keep giving you candy, right? We have to be good stewards with our money. We have a lot of other strategic initiatives that we have to deal with in this country. So we have to do both. All of these things are true. And the idea that only one thing is true and you can't have two things be true at the same time sort of drives you and me crazy. These are all true. Hit them as hard as you can, but give them a carrot. Give them a reason to stop this war while you make it as painful as possible.
All right, we're talking with David Hamilton from the National Security and Economic Center at UNT. Let's zoom out from the whole Russia-Ukraine situation here because, David, there's some stories that we've talked about a lot that sort of fell out of the news. I haven't seen a report on the Israel-Gaza situation in weeks, David, and I work in the news media. Well, I'm adjacent to the news media. What's even going on there?
Well, Hamas continues to occupy territory there. They continue to launch attacks. There are innocents that are trapped there. The Egyptians will still refuse to let those people escape. And those who support Hamas still continue to claim that the Israelis are committing genocide when they try to rid the area of people who would actually commit genocide against them. So that hasn't changed. And there are still hostages being kept by Hamas and its allies. So this isn't going to end anytime soon. I think the only way to get it to actually end is for the Israelis to move in mass and sort of go door to door. That'll get messy, but that is ultimately probably what will happen.
Well, if we just treated a siege like a siege is supposed to be treated all throughout human history, this would have been over now. But when this first, started going down and we were being told that, well, we've got to send in humanitarian aid. We've got to send in medicine and food and blankets and all this other help to the Gazans in the siege. For me, I came on the radar. I was like, are we just prolonging the human suffering here? Do we want this to end or do we just want this to continue indefinitely? And then here we are.
Yeah, Hamas wants those people to stay there because they are human shields and they are martyrs. They want to martyr as many people as they can to make the Israelis look bad. Militarily, the Israelis can take care of this. They don't have a problem with that. They won the 6-day war in 6 days. It was called the 6-day war, right? This could be the 2-hour war or whatever. They have the capability of doing it. Their single biggest weakness, their kryptonite, is public sentiment. And they spend a lot of time trying to make sure that the world is on their side and America is on their side. They don't want to be perceived as being evil, heartless, and uncaring about the innocents' lives that are being spilled. But the opposite is true. That Hamas does want them. And the answer is to be able to let those people escape. And there is a southern border, and those people could be allowed. Pressure hasn't been applied enough on the neighboring countries to let those people out. So sending humanitarian aid in so that somebody can get shot at as opposed to letting them get out doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well,
that's what we need to be focused on.
I'm kind of split on the Egypt situation because on one hand, hey, you buttheads, if you let the nice people out, then we can go in and carpet bomb Hamas and actually, solve the problem. On the other hand, Egypt, colluding with the people in the Palestinian territories, I'm using the air quotes there, that hasn't worked out too well for them in the past. So I don't know. What's Egypt's reason for not letting the refugees go into across their border?
Their stated reason is security concerns.
It's kind of vague.
Yeah, so they're concerned that these people will get out and somehow do harm. Well, we have that same issue with our border, right? Every country does. You want to make sure who gets in or who gets out, if they're good people or not. But to say vaguely that the issue is security concern is, there are a lot of security concerns. And that just doesn't hold water. If there are children younger than military age, women and children, et cetera, not a big threat, you ought to let them go. At the same time, the Israelis are going to have to continue to fight this war of attrition against those and sort of systematically pick off the bad guys, which, to your point, does, bringing in humanitarian aid extends this, allows them to keep those human shields in front of those bullets. So I think you have to you want to give them some humanitarian aid, but you have to apply pressure on all of the neighboring countries, and none of them want to take the Palestinians.
The other arena I wanted to run back by you that no one's talking about again is this whole situation with Iran, because there was the bombing that just happened. I mean, it feels like a year ago because it totally dropped out of the news. Now, right after it happened, David, you and I were being told that this could start World War III. This is destabilizing the region. Expect a swift response or a harsh response. And none of that has happened.
Yeah, a couple of things that we hoped would happen was the destabilization of the regime, and perhaps an uprising didn't happen. It is complete. I have great faith that their nuclear capacity has been damaged by setback years, if not more than that. The idea that maybe some of that material got out is possible. The subterfuge that we used to try to make them think we weren't going to attack, I think, was probably a good move because you didn't want them to sneak it out. We know that in Iraq, during the Iraq War, they snuck out, not what you could call them weapons of mass destruction, but they snuck out a whole lot of mustard gas and took it into Syria. That happened because they had enough time to do it. So having learned that lesson, we said, let's not let them sneak it out if we can help it. But as Hegseth said, if you're looking for their centrifuges, they're buried pretty deep. Happy about that. I don't think we had a choice. Came on your show back in January, I think it was, and said that they were only a month or two away from having 1 to possibly 8. The military needed to make 1 to 8 fissionable weapons based on the number of centrifuges they had, the kind of centrifuges they have, how much those can produce, at what level they can produce it to in terms of enrichment. They're way above the 5% you need to make energy out of. They're in the 70, 80% range, and you can make dirty bombs with that pretty easily. So this had to be done. It had to be done now. You can pay me now or you could pay me later. Do it now or do it in 6 months. But doing it 6 months late or a day late would have been inconceivable. You cannot let that regime have a weapon because they will use it.
David Hamilton, you're at the National Security Economic Center at UNT. What are you guys up to these days?
So we have a great event on September 13th at the Frontiers of Flight Museum. It's our Cyber, Land, Air, Sea, and Space Summit. Spells the acronym CLASS because we work with the military, and apparently it's required to have acronyms, right? So it spells
they love
CLASS.
that. Yeah, they love that.
Yeah, you love that sort of thing. So we've got a bunch of great folks. Secretary Norquist of NDIA. We have Admiral McCraven, Admiral Mullen, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Petraeus, Darcy Anderson, General Murray, who stood up the Army Futures Command. We're talking about drones, AI, innovation, advanced technologies, putting capabilities in the hands of the warfighter faster. And if people want to find it, they can go out to our website. It's a little hard to find right now. It'll be up here in a little bit. We have a nice website, and it is free to the public to come to the daytime event. And I will follow with more information the next time you have me on.
Am I invited?
You're always invited. As a matter of fact, you're allowed to speak. And I told you the first drink's always on me.
All right. Will there be snacks?
Lots of snacks.
Yeah. Now I'm in.
These are a rubber chicken dinner. We had a very nice dinner in the evening. Big plate of dinner, awards ceremonies. So we're honoring Admiral McCraven, who, ran our special forces and caught Osama bin Laden. So you got to come.
Yeah, it's a big name. Good job. All right. Well, thank you very much. This is David Hamilton. If you want to look up his outfit, it's called the National Security Economic Strategy Initiative. Isn't that the full name?
Yeah, National Security and Economic Strategy Initiative, and it will become a center at the university with a full degree program, executive education, policy and research institute, and we're setting that up under the new president, Dr. Keller.
Look forward to it. Thank you, David Hamilton. Now, the news has been just packed as of late between the floodings and the Epstein files and all the other 28 wild things that are going on, the ICE raids and whatever. Something that's fallen out of the news is this talk on tariffs. However, tariffs didn't go away. I think the media and really American public at large just got a little exhausted talking about tariffs all the time. It's not a sexy topic. It's not something that's easily grasped. It's an intangible. But you are going to be affected by them. Michelle Schultz is back on the show. She's a founding managing partner of Schultz Trade Law. And look, they're still there. There are talks of more coming on the way. New tariffs against Canada, new tariffs against Russia. At the end of the month, there's a deadline for a whole series of countries. Some of them are European. Do you feel like the average person is being significantly affected by the tariffs yet, Michelle?
I don't see a huge effect yet. I see it already impacting our corporate clients, and they are working very hard to navigate the changes in the tariffs, which happen every day. So it's nearly impossible to navigate. But I think it's really going to flow down to the consumer in the next few months when these tariffs really start to take hold and the U.S. importers flow down the cost to the buyers.
Yeah, so most of the tariffs that got threatened and made news earlier this year got a pause. And so we do have a few trade deals, but not enough to avoid the pause coming back. How many countries, I mean, I'm sure you don't know off the top of your head, but don't we only have deals with a few countries and we're still facing new tariffs with a whole bunch of countries at the end of the month?
That's correct. We were, I know the administration was aiming for something like 90 deals in 90 days. We have probably, I would guess, less than 20. And the deals are in some part just letters. They're letters that the Trump administration has sent out and said, hey, this is what we're going to charge you. And you've got a little bit of time to negotiate. If you don't negotiate, this is what you're going to pay. And those tariffs are high.
I hear you on that one. This is Michelle Schultz from Schultz Trade Law talking about international tariffs. Now, the big guys that we're worried about really is our neighbors to the north and south, Canada and Mexico. Canada is facing new tariffs. Are we getting along okay with Mexico? Did we ever get that resolved, or do we have to worry about that situation too?
We still need to worry about Mexico, actually. Both Mexico and Canada are scheduled to be tariffed at higher rates. 35% is the rate that we're looking at right now. And Mexico, even though we have a free trade agreement, is subject to the tariffs. So I would expect there's going to be a debate there and some retaliation.
Well, it seems sort of counterintuitive that we still have all this hanging over our head, but the stock market doesn't seem to mind at all. They've been banging all-time highs lately. GDP growth is still expected to be positive for the second quarter. We should get that number, I think, next week or whatnot. How do you explain the fact that the markets don't seem to mind?
Yeah, and that is baffling to me in a way. I think it's just a matter of timing because a lot of our clients, corporate clients, had stocked up on certain merchandise ahead of time, or they had planned around the tariffs. But we're getting to a point where tariffs are going to apply to virtually every country, and there will be few exceptions. So it's a timing issue from what I can tell. And it will be coming soon, in the next few months, I would suppose.
What are you telling your clients that are dealing with this? You do trade law for a living during the week. What advice are you handing them?
I'm handing them advice that is very practical. So what I mean by that is there are specific duty savings programs that companies can use, and there are specific ways to interpret your value of your merchandise. there are also specific ways to classify your merchandise. And all of those things go into the tariff rate. Country of origin is also an issue. So what we do is take a really technical dive into their trade data and figure out if they are properly classifying or if they're properly valuing, because the percentage is going to be based on your value. A lot of companies don't understand customs valuation, and so some are accidentally overvaluing, and that's just one small way to chip away at the overall cost that's coming down.
All right, this is Michelle Schultz from Schultz Trade Law. You know, I might have to talk to you at the end of the month if some of these new tariffs come down, but I hope we work it out and I don't have to talk to you again. As good of a guest as you are, Michelle. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much, James. My pleasure.
All right, there she is, Michelle Schultz from Schultz Trade Law. Billy Currington and Kip Moore are coming to the pavilion at Toyota Music Factory on August 1st. Special guest Marlon Fanaki. Get tickets and information now at livenation.com, or you can be listening to the WBAP morning show all week long. They're going to be giving away some tickets. You can have a chance to win if you listen to my buddies, Hal, Jay, Carla, Ernie on the morning show. And I think is everyone back from vacation this week, Monty and the whole crew? So listen to the WBAP morning show for a chance to win Billy Currington and Kip Moore tickets on August 1st. That show's right around the corner. Coming up on the James Show, you remember the illegal immigrant ICE raids that happened at the two big pot farms in California? What do you find out how many criminal illegal immigrants were arrested in those raids? Get the numbers next on the James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.